Aquaus Kelley, Love and Ambition, a Visual Diary. Today's date is Friday, January 15th, 2021. The time now is 12:22 p.m. and while my students are working independently on a science assignment, I was thinking of the notion of the mastery of craft, mastering our craft. How do we master our craft? What does that process look like? And the reason why I thought of this is as I am laying the framework, as I was laying the framework for my lesson just now and explaining and making sure that my students have everything that they need to complete the assignment, which is essential because if they don't, they're just going to come back. It really comes down to, for me at least, doing the work every single day, the small steps every day, the small iterations and nuances and pivots that we need to make every day. It can be something as small as, let's say, recently I started to notice that some students were not explaining certain parts of instructions and directions. So in a math assignment, the phrase N, actually it wasn't the phrase N, it was N in parentheses. And oftentimes we give directions and we assume that our students will understand what they need to do, but that doesn't necessarily happen. And what that causes is it causes students to kind of freeze because there's a level of apprehension where in order for people and students to ask questions, in order for people and students to ask questions, we have to feel comfortable enough to ask the question. I feel and I know there's a layer somewhere between understanding that we don't understand, yet feeling as though we're not comfortable enough to ask a question. And I think that's very interesting. In fact, as I'm speaking about this now, I think it's something that I would like to dig deeper into, because when we create an environment where we are comfortable asking questions, that's where a lot of progress can be made. And on my mind right now is how do we create those conditions to create a space, an environment where asking questions becomes the norm as opposed to being passive and not being active. Because the process of learning, the process of mastering our craft is really about being aware and being mindful and knowing when we don't understand and knowing when to ask questions. I believe that this is all a part of the process of learning. However, we have to be in a comfortable headspace in order to do that. If we're not comfortable, if we're nervous, if we are apprehensive, we are not going to take that step forward to understand the importance of asking questions so that we can get what we need to move forward. And this is what I believe really enables us to master our craft. And for me personally, a lot of it is reflection, making time to reflect and document and take notes as we're doing what we're doing, right? So literally right now, I'm in the middle of instruction. My students are working independently. So now I have time to have a micro reflection in regards to what happened during the first 25 minutes. What happened? What can I capture? What can I do better? How can I become better? Realizing that, okay, just to ask a question verbally isn't good enough. Knowing that not only do I have to ask a question, I also have to type the question and then pose the question and put that question in the chat so that students can listen when I ask the question and also see the question in the chat, and then pair that together, because now they're seeing the question that they heard and they are reading the question. So they're also looking at, I encourage them to look at my spelling. Look at the question mark, the punctuation marks, the capital letter. This is all essential. And this is what I mean by mastering our craft, because as I continue to master my craft as an educator, my students are continuing to master their craft as students, right? So that's the partnership right there. And it really comes in the day-to-day practice, every single day, not underestimating those small steps. I've said this before, I'll say it again, it's literally right there. Do not underestimate the cumulative power of our small wins. Just the small wins every day. One assignment at a time. One direction at a time. One sentence at a time. I've been telling my students, just read one sentence at a time. Don't look at the assignment and get overwhelmed, because that's not going to allow you to do the work that needs to be done. Just take one sentence at a time. Just read one sentence. That's all I'm asking for. Read the sentence, circle whatever you don't understand. If you understand everything in that sentence, put a check mark next to it. That's another strategy I've been using, so that as I'm looking through work, I can scan through the work. Wherever I see the circles, I stop, meet with the student. What's going on? I know what they don't understand. Therefore, there's no wait time. We're not wasting time. Okay? Everything's laid out. It's structured. It's a system. So I see checks. Okay. I see the checks. That means the student understands what they have to do. Let's go to the next step. Where's the next problem at? So it's setting those benchmarks when it comes to identifying the different phases within the learning process. Because sometimes things are held up in the early stages, in the beginning stages before the actual assignment. Sometimes it's just the directions that are misunderstood. So if the directions are misunderstood, of course the assignment isn't going to be completed properly. So I'm all about just setting the structure, the organization, so that I can really hone in on specifically what areas I need to address specifically, right? Otherwise, things can become pretty abstract. But when we put the procedures and approaches and practices into place properly, again, this goes back to mastering our craft. We know specifically what to address. We know specifically what question to ask. How should we assess this student's understanding? How should we assess this person's understanding? And then the question to ask next. So creating those sequences, creating that sequence. Okay, if this doesn't work, I'm gonna go here. If this doesn't work, I'm gonna go here. It's a lot of strategy, right? For me, I call it educational strategy. And I'm enjoying it. I'm loving it. I'm learning every day. I'm applying every day. And that's why I want to do more of these videos, because I want to share the information that I believe needs to be shared. I want to give what I believe I would love to receive. So being that I'm a teacher in my 4th year now, I have enough experience and I've seen enough and heard enough that I want to give what it is I learned, so that someone like me 4 years ago, just coming into the profession, doesn't have to deal with those particular areas or aspects, and their learning curve is much smaller. So that's what I believe in. That's why I believe in the importance of documentation and the importance of codification, right? That's it. So that's all I have to say right now. Student just came in and left. Sometimes they do that. I tell them to come back to the main call if they have any questions, but sometimes they do it by accident. So with that being said, Aquaus Kelley, Love and Ambition, a visual diary. Much peace, much love, much happiness.